My oh my, Dawn of the Hunt, what a disturbing release so far. Cited as the most disastrous and polarizing patch across both games ever by Grinding Gear Games themselves, dominated by the arrival of a new exile and their pointy weapon and a less flashy slab of wood, interwoven with poor unintentional changes to a well-done campaign and amazing intentional changes to an endgame half-baked. In competition with a rival ARPG pumped to the gullet with quality of life, loads of ludicrous loot pops, and a truly blasty experience, wounded by the lack of attention to its predecessor, Path of Exile 1, and yet, regardless of all the drama, game balance issues, and strong competition, Path of Exile 2's 020 expansion, Dawn of the Hunt, managed to be an extremely fun, and if not fun for you in particular, sizable update to PoE 2's early access period at the end of the day. Hang on, I'm gonna explain how, piece by piece. Today we're exploring the entire disturbed story of Dawn of the Hunt thus far, from its early struggles, unprecedented developer interview, quick patches, and dominant builds to its current state and whether or not it accomplished its primary goals. As always, on screen now are the chapters of this video. Timestamps are in the description, as are sources. Hey Exiles, I'm Talkative. Try like this video to spread this PoE 2 news across YouTube and subscribe for more Talkative Try content. Let us kick off with something wacky, with the one primary skill dominating PoE 2 in 020. Lightning Spear. Now, this one has an interesting story. Early on, very few people were hopping on Lightning Spear. Its play rate was low and players hadn't realized its true potential. Then, as the skill was picking up a bit of steam, Grinding Gear also buffed it in an emergency balance patch 3 days into the league, giving it about 5% more damage. Now, if you look at PoE2.Ninja, an aggregate of the top 60,000 characters in the normal Dawn of the Hunt league, here's the data on Lightning Spear. 33% of characters are Amazons, and 87% of Amazons use Lightning Spear. 16% are Deadeyes, and 74% of them use Lightning Spear. And finally, overall, 53% of all characters on PoE2.Ninja in 020 use Lightning Spear. This sort of dominance is basically unprecedented in the PoE universe, but why is it happening? How is the top build diversity worse in 020 than in 010? Well, Huntress and Spears are shiny and new. People likely gravitated to start with this class and weapon. Then they quickly realized this one skill, along with some supplements, accomplished basically everything the game needs you to do, even without the guidance of savants like Fubgun and the Lazy Exile. Players like myself tried it out, realized it played incredible and was strong, and sculpted their builds around it. So yes, it was shiny, but it was also simple to construct. You can literally stumble into this and without being a build master, clear all the way to tier 15 waystones and feel like a god. It also has a variety of ways to build it. Do you use a row mount or none? Do you have a beast companion or not? Do you go Deadeye, Amazon, or Smith of Kitava? Buckler or no buckler? Pure lightning damage or cold conversion? Do you use extra skills or just focus solely on Lightning Spear? And so on and so forth. It's so highly customizable. Like I said, it is also extremely satisfying and it accomplishes what the later PoE 2 endgame warrants: high damage, screen clearing abilities. There's still a ton happening on screens, especially in the late game of PoE 2. You need snappy, hard-hitting skills or most of the time, you are dead. What's the go-to? Lightning Spear. On top of this, some people also just enjoy the one-button playstyle possible with Lightning Spear and gravitate toward that. Then, of course, there's also the trends. Lightning Spear, especially a few days into the league, became the go-to skill of many build guide creators on YouTube, Twitch, Mobalytics, and the like. People flocked to these builds, especially the Deadeye variant, and it skyrocketed the skill's popularity compared to the rest of the field. Finally, it's cheap. There's not much you need to get it online and popping off. Grab a pair of Kotoka's Current and a Tangle Tongue rare gear, and you are wilding out. Does this mean other skills are not viable? Of course not, but Lightning Spear checks so many boxes and, most importantly, it's super fun, which incurs its dominance in 020 and is the source of even more limited build variety than the launch patch of PoE 2. Now, before we continue the tale of Dawn of the Hunt so far, a word from today's sponsor, War Thunder. Get ready to dive into the ultimate action-packed adventure with War Thunder. This is the most epic vehicle combat game ever made, and the best part, it's completely free on PC, consoles, and mobile devices with terrific optimization, with each sculpted for a high FPS experience. Take the driver's seat or pilot's cockpit with over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships from 10 powerhouse nations, from the roaring 1920s all the way to cutting-edge modern warfare. How do they all measure up to each other? You might ask? Well, they just do, and it's rad. You will feel the adrenaline pumping through you as you leap into heart-pounding battles featuring jaw-dropping graphics, insanely detailed vehicles, and sound effects so real, you'll swear you're in the middle of the action. Join over 70 million players across the globe and unleash your inner commander in thrilling PvP showdowns. It doesn't matter if you're a military history buff or just love a good explosion. War Thunder has something amazing waiting for you. Leap into War Thunder now with my links below and get a tremendous free bonus pack including vehicles, boosters, and more for PC and consoles. This only applies to brand new players or those who have not played for the last 6 months. Thanks to War Thunder for sponsoring today's video, and thanks to you for watching the ad. Now, let's get back to the story of Dawn of the Hunt. Unfortunately, for almost the entire Path of Exile community, Dawn of the Hunt has been plagued by drama and controversy, beginning far before launch and roiling ever more after release. I can sum it all up in about 2 minutes if you're out of the loop or looking for a refresher. And yes, I'll do this in dramatic fashion. It all began with the announcement of no Path of Exile 1 expansion for the foreseeable future, which miffed a ton of players eagerly seeking an update to that game, which last received a real new update in July 2024. Being real, this is probably one of the largest sources of the vocal support against PoE2, and the calm-headed folks are justified here. They're just sad their favorite game essentially stopped getting consistent updates when that was not originally the plan. That's happened to me before with Guild Wars 2, and I was crushed. Then came the reveal for Dawn of the Hunt, which focused almost entirely on the new content coming, with very little announced in the form of balance or vision for the game. That insight only arriving in the ZiggyD Q&A with Mark and Jonathan, way after the reveal. GGG mentioned they were unhappy with the power and speed in the game and it'd be changed, mostly at Endgame with no real further elaboration. After that came the patch notes, which contained absolute Armageddon for basically everything and lacked the info specific to skill gem related alterations. Some loved this, many hated it, others were determined to wait for the actual patch before truly reacting. Finally, the patch arrived and oh my, the game had definitely changed for a great deal of the player base. Per Grinding Gear, due to a variety of changes to monsters, skills, and other parts of the game intended to target endgame and not the campaign became much more difficult, especially for some builds and playstyles. This increased difficulty and the initial jank of the spear playstyle, which many people flocked to with it being new, along with launch bugs, caused an absolute stir in the community. Some people played and had fun. Others played and were quite upset but respectful about the state of the game, and others leaped onto the hate bandwagon. Never before have I seen so much rage bait and vitriol in the PoE community across the board, and I've played since 2019. However, this extreme reaction alongside good feedback in the proper avenues like detailed forum posts, measured Reddit threads, and negative reviews on Steam stirred Grinding Gear Games to act, especially after a tense one-on-one live interview. The Zizarin Cross GGG interview marked the changing point, partially, for the community. Many of their concerns and frustrations were brought directly to the two individuals at the head of PoE2 development, and though some believed the interview to be contentious, even I thought that upon initially watching the first half, it was definitely a net positive at the end of the day, with great changes to PoE2 announced later that same day. So what did this polarizing initial reception and rocky few weeks post-launch do to Dawn of the Hunt? Well, we'll dive more into this in the big feedback, big debates section, but it has essentially caused an even greater divide in the community, unfortunately, a fissure continuing to mount that surely shouldn't. It's also true the game was way jankier for many on 0.2.0 release than 0.1.0, especially during the earliest parts of the game. Dawn of the Hunt peaked around 245,000 players on Steam, so not counting direct client or console users, that was still less than 50% of the all-time peak for its initial early access launch again on Steam. Sure, it's likely because some people bought the game, played it, and either didn't like it or only bought it for one playthrough, but the lower player numbers and slightly quicker drop-off were likely influenced by the poor campaign balance a decent amount of people experienced during launch and the first few days beyond. The game certainly has issues. Grinding Your Games is working on the issues and responding to them as fast as any company feasibly can. And if the issues are too immense to play, you don't need to play and you can wait for it to get better, or its eventual 1.0 release where a lot of this should be resolved. It's as simple as that, truly. One thing's for sure, it's going to be a turbulent ride to the 1.0 launch whenever that occurs, but the game will be all the better for it because of us playing it and the developers continuing to iterate and change it. As a final added point on this topic, I still don't think this obvious giant beta test should be so heavily monetized with mystery boxes and the like. And with that being done, it's pushing some people to believe this is a more finished, more polished product. It's not. There's a lot of road left to go. And while I and many others are ready for it, some people just aren't. Aside from the introduction of the Huntress and the Spear, the primary goal of Dawn of the Hunt was to improve and deepen the endgame experience in PoE 2. So, did Grinding Gear succeed on this front? Well, it's a mixed bag. Let's begin by looking at progression through the endgame via that main quest line. It's definitely better than 0.1.0, but it can still use a bunch of work. Currently, hunting corrupted nexuses is what you need to do to progress the main story quest line to get your Atlas passive points. I'm on tier 15 Waystones, I've been there for a bit, I'm on my tier 6 corrupted nexus. This needs to be altered, or the amount of corrupted nexuses needs to change a little bit. I'm wondering if you mix in doing some certain towers or doing cleansed areas into just the corrupted nexuses so that the progression isn't so stale. This is way better than just doing 10 of each tier of map, but I still think it can be improved and smooth out a tremendous amount. Additionally, progression should just be smooth with hard decisions after the initial main quest completion. I shouldn't want to decide between progressing through my Atlas tiers and going and hunting corrupted nexuses, or I shouldn't need to decide right off the bat whether I want to stay in one area and do all the cleansed maps instead of hunting for more corrupted nexuses and trying to improve my Atlas skill tree. I think that should come after the initial quest. And speaking of that initial quest, the first Arbiter of Ash encounter should be deterministic. I still have only found a single Citadel. I have friends who have been playing for many hours. They've found 2 of 3. I have one who has found 3 of 3, and that's great, but that's it. They've been playing for about 120 hours. That is wild. The very first Arbiter should be findable progressively and with ease, especially now that you can attempt him infinite times and you don't have a limited number of 6 to try and kill the Arbiter. Get people hooked, give them that first epic encounter with the Arbiter, and then have them branch out once they've unlocked the beginning part of that Arbiter tree, once they have all of their Atlas nodes, and really allow them to maneuver through the end game of PoE 2 and explore that Atlas. I will give a shout out on the progression as well. Now the first time you find each league mechanic, and I'm talking about Breach or Ritual or Expedition, you get a little quest icon at one of the NPCs in your hideout. I think their name is Atsuwala, and you get a tablet for that specific league mechanic and a little bit of lore about it. I like that added flavor and that a little bit of push to continue finding these mechanics in the game and use towers. That's all A+ Grinding Your Games, as is the addition of the added interactions with Doriani and the cleansed maps. I was a big fan of that. Those new monsters too. Oh, love the new demons in the corrupted maps and the twisted malformations in the cleansed maps. They're wicked. And speaking of towers, looking at improved mechanics, towers feel much better in general, and bosses are much more frequent, and that is great. Rituals also feel much more rewarding, as do the unique strong boxes. That's awesome too. Breach is still pretty crazy, but not as wild, and I'm actually getting stacks of Breach Splinters now, which is nice to finally get. I think all the mechanics in the endgame that already existed have been improved upon. Yes, including Expedition with the recombination, even though I still feel like that's a little bit out of reach unless you are spamming expeditions. I've not really been able to engage with that mechanic because I am not getting nearly enough expeditions, but I guess I just really need to invest into that to encounter it more. More using tablets, more chasing down the expedition encounters and maps. I've not really been focusing on that. Taking a look at the new endgame mechanics, Rogue Exiles seem to be a miss. They aren't too rewarding, even investing into them. I've still not seen any with uniques on it, and that was one of the main selling points. They seem pretty weak. They're either pretty weak or they just keep flasking, and it seems to be an infinite battle there. I think they need to be retuned a little bit, especially in terms of their rewards. And then we move to Wisps. They don't have that pop. I imagine they would have that pop that Grinding Gear Games perfected with League mechanics and Path of Exile 1, but when you spend all this time chasing this wisp and then fighting the monster that it eventually inhabits, there's really nothing extra of value added there. So I just choose to not engage with it nearly as much, which is a shame because I really like the modifiers that they add and how they've reused some assets there, like with the Arbiter's Wave. It's cool, but it's not rewarding. Additionally, the endgame maps are cool. However, I have only encountered 4 of them in all of my playtime. I've played for about 40 hours now. Not all of that's at endgame. I think a little over half of that is at endgame. So I wish they were a little bit more common. I actually have 2 of them on screen right now, the Lake of Kalandra and the Monolith with the boss rush, which is very, very exciting. Okay, and then we just have to talk about loot in endgame. Where is the currency? What happened to it? Exalted orbs, divine orbs, val orbs. All of this stuff seems to be missing. Greater jeweler's orbs, perfect jeweler's orbs. It's gone. Where did it go? I'm not exaggerating here. I was able to easily sustain maps and upgrading them with exalted orbs and slam item bases that I found, which were cool. And now I am not able to do that. I have to choose between one or the other, and sometimes none at all because I am lacking the exalted orbs. I did get a little bit lucky. My last play session, I found that gambling box. I got like 20 exalted orbs from it. I sold some gear. So I'm sitting at 38 exalted orbs in my stash. I know. My point is, huge change between 010 and now. Now I'm not able to do all those things, and I don't know if that's intentional or not. I don't know if Grinding Gear Games wants us to be very limited with the currency we have. I don't think that's their goal. They wanted us to be able to use it consistently in the campaign. That's not happening. There has to be something broken. I don't know if it broke when they nerfed rarity or if there was some other change, but I really hope they look into what's going on with currency because it has pushed a bunch of people off the game that were otherwise having a great time. And then there's a whole crafting versus ground loot debate, but I really want them to focus on the currency because they have to fix that aspect first before they can really dive into crafting and looking at loot on the ground, at least in my opinion. So what's the conclusion here in terms of endgame? They succeeded. They improved endgame. It feels much better, but there are still quite a few improvements to be made. Of course, we're in early access. Endgame was rushed. We know that there's a breadth of mechanics still coming. I think the 2 biggest problems are the progression through with the endgame quest and loot in general. And then while we're talking about endgame, I have a wild thing to throw out. I have now come to the belief that they shouldn't transport every league mechanic from PoE 1 into PoE 2. I don't think it's worth it. I think a lot of these mechanics just won't translate well into PoE 2 unless a lot of reworking is done, and that doesn't necessarily appear to be happening. I think they'd choose a very limited set of Path of Exile 1 content to move to PoE 2, and then they just crank out the classes, they crank out the campaign, and then they start making new stuff specific to PoE 2 and the systems that are built into that game. Let me know if you agree with me in the comments below. Let's move on to the next part. Threaded throughout Dawn of the Hunt and the previous launch patch for PoE 2 Early Access, a fun little debate has exploded, which I feel is quite silly, but being grappled with by some bad actors. Let me lay it out by asking and answering several frequently asked questions. Why is PoE 2 in Early Access? Because it's essentially in a beta state and needs a lot of work and feedback on systems as fundamental to a game as crafting and as minute as the way certain game menus function. Us players are basically beta testers and are meant to provide feedback, and some of us are having fun while doing this at the same time. Are players who do not like the game haters? No, of course not. Are players who enjoy the game shills? No, of course not. Can you enjoy the game and provide critique concurrently? Why, yes, you can. Are some people intentionally conflating shills, of which there are literally none, and those who enjoy the game? Yeah. Are some people intentionally conflating genuine haters and those who just dislike the game? Yeah. Are some people cranking up the hate for the game and vitriol toward the developers and those who like it intentionally? 100%, and it's terrible for everyone except the people profiting off the hate. Try, do you love grinding gear games? Yep, they've made 2 of my top 5 games of all time. I have a huge amount of belief in them. It's pretty simple, Exiles. You can love this game and still have issues with it, or you can hate this game, still play it, and still provide measured feedback and have productive conversations with people you disagree with. I do it all the time, including with my brother. We'll talk about my brother in a second. I am definitely self-aware. I lean to the side of absolutely loving the game, understanding it is flawed, and knowing the developers were trying to do something incredibly different with PoE2 compared to PoE1 and other ARPGs. In the days after launch, I released a video basically saying, chill, stop complaining, give it more time, don't make conclusions already, we are 3 days in. On some of the stuff in that video, like telling players to give the endgame a bit more of a chance despite me myself not having experienced yet, I was definitely wrong. But with other stuff, like basically saying players needed to treat this as a new type of isometric ARPG, not PoE1, not Diablo 4, not No Rest for the Wicked, I 100% stand by. In response to my positive view of this particular patch, even while acknowledging flaws in design, parts where the game went 2 steps back, I've seen some extremely disturbing stuff. People absolutely hate that I enjoy the game. They create conspiracy theories about me and how I'm fake or how I am paid off by grinding gear games and how all I want to do is have them love me. Exiles, my very first interaction with Jonathan Rogers after playing PoE2 for the first time was as follows. Warrior and Mace feels terrible. Where the heck is the loot? I got 1 rare after 4 hours playing, and I kept getting swarmed by pack after pack after pack. And this was in March of 2024. I don't shy away from feedback, but I also try to be professional, not whine, and yeah, I generally enjoy the game and its direction. I'm not trying to discount other people's experiences, and I'm not trying to create an echo chamber. But yes, I do have a certain vibe about me, as some people have definitely noticed. Appending on to this point, holy heavens, Exiles. The players, the content creators who are pissed because I speak about my dad and brother playing the game and enjoying it as new and yes, quite casual, low skill, low knowledge players, it's flabbergasting to me. Reading and hearing responses to me genuinely just chatting about what they like and what they don't like about the game, it's incredible. Am I trying to use my dad as an example to paint a broad brush over all casual players or all players? No, I am giving an anecdote. That's it. That's all. I'm not a villain. I'm not trying to discount any of your experiences, which are subjective with PoE2. I'm just a dude playing a game, sometimes with my friends and family, and sharing my own experiences only in what I believe to be a chill, positive, and measured manner. That's just who I am. But I'm afraid I'm never gonna be able to live down the allegations. To sum this whole section up, is PoE2 surprisingly polished in many areas? Yeah. Does it have fundamental issues I have problems with and others have no problem with? Yeah. Does it and its developers deserve unabashed hate? Nah. It's really that simple. Some enjoy it, some don't, and that's okay, if you keep it civil. Just like this penultimate part of our Dawn of the Hunt story. 2 weeks into Dawn of the Hunt's release, arguably PoE2's largest competitor, last Epoch launched its 2nd season, Tombs of the Erased. After pushing their date 2 weeks due to 020's April 4th release, some thought this would break LE's momentum. They were wrong. The release seems to be exactly what many ARPG players sought, a major expansion to the game's lacking areas, a build crafter and item chaser's paradise, and continuing to iterate on the already stellar foundation LE had built. It peaked around 149,000 players on Steam, a bit over half its all-time peak during its launch in 2024, and it has been viewed as a massive success and serious competitor to PoE2. This is good, of course, yet I'd argue it is a competitor, not so much in a direct sense. Instead, it currently offers an entirely different experience compared to PoE2, even compared to PoE1 or Diablo 4, and you should definitely give it a go if you haven't already. The challenge in this game truly comes down to building your character via items, skills, and passives, and tinkering the best possible way to do so to push the infinitely scaling endgame. That's where the fun is. The moment-to-moment combat and gameplay isn't too fun in my opinion, from the pack-to-pack blow-ups to the normal and even pinnacle boss fights, but the game excels in the treasure hunt, the experience of crafting your own items and being able to easily revamp your build. It's great there's another ARPG to play in the ring now if you've got the time or energy, and while it might not be the best for everyone, it's the best for some and quite a lot of fun for many others, and that's great. I realized after playing it for about 11 hours, it just wasn't for me. Unfortunately, which kind of crushed me. I suppose I am not in the sphere of those who hyper enjoy the system-focused sides of ARPGs. I truly like the meaty, moment-to-moment gameplay of eviscerating monsters and leaping out of harm's way. However, of course, I'll hop back into LE in the future, but right now, I'm a Dawn of the Hunt PoE2 boy. So that's the story of Dawn of the Hunt so far overall, but what has my personal experience been? Well, I decided to play a Huntress as many others did, and I am now level 86. I have a decent chunk of my Atlas explored. I'm on T15 maps. I am currently hunting citadels and just progressing through Cataclysm's Wake, finding nexuses. You can see right here my stash. Actually, you can't see my stash. Let's move that. As you can see, I don't have much currency to behold. I haven't found a single divine orb. I just found my first greater jeweler's orb. I still have 0 perfect orbs. I have traded for most of my gear, only finding this GG buckler right here that basically solved all of my resistances. I stumbled upon Tangle Tongue and Kitoko's, the interaction with Lightning Spear, and it is absolutely giga powerful. I'm also using a variety of skills as you've been seeing in the gameplay throughout this video, not just Lightning Spear. I know a lot of this could be automated, but I'm not doing it, and I'm doing lots of different buttons with primarily Lightning Spear being my big damage skill. As you can see on my slash played, I played for 1 day, 15 hours. That's about 39 hours played. That is far less than I played in the first weekend of 010. I've actually played this patch at a very leisurely pace. It launched and it had all this controversy that I've discussed throughout the video. And honestly, as I said, it kind of turned me off a little bit. And I stepped back from content creation. I wasn't streaming a lot. I took quite a substantial break. And I've just played and chilled and spent a lot of time with my family or just watched some TV shows, read some books. It's kind of wild. And I have still been enjoying myself, but I'm doing it very, very slowly. I'm not blasting this as I typically do with a Path of Exile 1 league, where I go for the 40 out of 40 challenges, or like I did with 020, in which I ended up having around 350 hours. I'd presume by the time this league is over, I'd say maybe I'll hit 60 hours or so, and that's really good. I'm having a swell time, but I'm also taking this game in a very different way than a lot of other people do. I'm not blasting it. I'm not zooming through. I'm really taking it at a relaxing pace, and I'm enjoying that journey. I'm just playing one character or so, taking them from the riverbanks all the way, hopefully, to the final tier of the Arbiter. And I'm not in a rush to do it. Even doing that, though, there have been some problems that I've noticed further with Path of Exile 2, even though I'm massively enjoying my very limited time in the game. And these biggest remaining problems can be broken down into 4 categories: game balance, loot, progression, and treating this like a full release and not a broken mess. And that last part right there is a bit of an exaggeration on my part. First up, game balance. The game is in a terribly imbalanced state. There's just basically one skill that has risen to the top, as we looked at earlier in the video, Lightning Spear, and then a bunch of other stuff is just not balanced well. I'm talking about you, Acolyte of Chayula. I'm looking at multiple other ascendancies, many other skills, lots of unique items, the monsters themselves, some bosses. The game is very imbalanced, and of course that's going to happen with an early access game. However, as we'll get to soon, I'd imagine that there should be some more going in here instead of just leaving it in the state it's in for balance passes and expansions every 3 to 4 months. Then there's loot. Loot is a problem. There seems to be a bit of, and I use a bit usually to mean a lot, and it's kind of a faux pas of mine. There is a big problem with RNG and loot in this game. It feels like a slot machine, whether it comes to actually finding an item that you need or crafting an item with the currency orbs that you have available, and you have very few currency orbs available, and that is a massive problem. Loot needs another pass. I'm not sure if this is a result of the rarity changes, but it sure seems like it might be related. The loot experience in 0.1.0 felt much better than in 0.2.0, and I feel like 0.2.0 would have felt much better if it had the loot of 0.1.0 with the greater crafting systems that we found in 0.2.0. I think that one right there, honestly, is it's the largest problem with the game, and I think it's why a lot of people bounced from PoE2 to last Epoch, because it has the opposite of a loot problem. It almost has a loot overabundance. And then we have progression, and it's not just endgame progression, it's also progression through the campaign, right? And this is also something that I really expected to come with this patch, is another act in the game. I hope that happens in 0.3.0 so that the progression through the campaign doesn't feel so samey, where you're going through acts 1 through 3, you're doing cruel, doing them again, and then getting into the end game and the progression systems there. It still needs work. I think it feels a lot better than 0.1.0, especially in the end game, but I'd still like to see them do better, especially with the path to the Arbiter of Ash and other endgame bosses. And then the final point, the fact that this is being treated like a full release game and not an early access game or a beta. And this is not only by Grinding Gear Games, it's by the players as well. So firstly, Grinding Gear Games is seemingly only doing major balance passes, big shakeups every 3 to 4 months, right? We just got the first in April, it released in December. That's about a little over 4 months, right? And they're monetizing the game as well, okay? We have mystery boxes in the game, we have cosmetics in the cosmetics store. I just don't necessarily agree with it. I think they should have just put the box price on it. They should have then just let the game be played by those who are okay with having a janky mess. Sure, you can still have a lot of fun in a janky mess, and a lot of the stuff here is incredibly polished, and it feels good. And, you know, the Huntress has all these lines of dialogue when she's going into maps that are unique to her, and when she encounters certain monsters, also unique to, like, there's places where it feels incredibly polished, and then places where it seems like they haven't decided what they want the game to be. I think that will definitely come with time, but given the fact that they're treating it like a full release, a lot of players are also seeing this as a finished product. And it's not. And I don't necessarily blame them for thinking that, especially people who aren't necessarily plugged into videos like this one, or reading Reddit, or the forums, or watching Twitch streamers and the like. Lots of people might be a little bit confused about what's happening here. And I really hope Grinding Gear Games reverses course on this, changes up what they're doing. I know that they probably won't go back on the monetization aspect right now, but at least in the terms of balance. GGG. I don't know why you're not doing this. If any of you are watching this video, balance the game more. Do minor buffs to things, do minor nerfs to things, so people are encouraged to try out these other play styles and skills. And just put a big fat disclaimer on respeccing, or giving people free respecs. You can put a disclaimer saying, hey, respecs are 80% off during early access. This will go away in full release, right? Or every time there's a balance pass, let's say every 2 to 3 weeks, right? Not content, just balance. You give everybody a free passive tree reset that they can use. Or you just put a consistent passive tree reset in the game and put it on a cooldown timer. I think Localhold, Dreamcore, or Surgog said this in our latest podcast. I think that's a great idea. Give it a 72-hour cooldown timer. I think that would massively help build diversity and freedom for players in Path of Exile 2. And I think that's something the game desperately needs during early access. If everybody feels shoehorned into playing this certain playstyle to keep up with the market, or just because it's the most fun, like Lightning Spear really seems to be, then I don't think that's good. It's going to turn early access into a very elongated beta period. And I don't think that's what anybody wants. I think people want the game to get into a more final state sooner. Okay, let's move into the final topic here. As an ultimate note on Dawn of the Hunt and Path of Exile 2 overall, I'd sincerely like to remind at least everyone watching this video until near the end, and to our lovely little community here, this is a game. Games are meant to be enjoyed, and if they are turning into a chore for you, or if you don't like playing them, please just take a break. By no means should people not be passionate and not care about the games they play, but when that passion devolves into bitter fury, it might be time to put the game catalyzing that fervor down. I've experienced this fury myself with multiple games. Dungeons and Dragons Online, or DDO, is the best example, wherein a bug caused me to lose all my epic Destiny experience, and the developers at the time, Turbine, couldn't restore it. Imagine you had, let's say, a level 100 character and you just got D-level to level 10. That's basically what happened here. It was insurmountable. Absolutely pure hatred boiled inside my then 15-year-old mind and body, but instead of spewing hurtful epithets and doing nothing constructive, I left a well-mannered post on the forums reporting the bug, expressing my discontent, stopped playing the game, and moved on to something else. It was Guild Wars 2 at the time. Of course, we can all be better though, more measured, and always seek self-reflection and improvement. And I know this might sound super dumb coming at the end of a video about an early access game, but this release nearly broke me as a content creator, my fellow exiles. I took the longest break I ever have with making videos, chatting with you all, and even playing PoE 2 because the furious zeitgeist was so unbelievably out of control. It was draining, exhausting, disturbing, and that's not how a thing meant for leisure should make one feel. So I took a break and I'm good now. And I hope all of you are too. Yeah, even you, the person out there who called me the most disingenuous piece of content creator there is. Seriously, be well. Here's to a bunch more fun in 020, a hopeful PoE 1 3.26 launch in June, and an exciting time upcoming in PoE 2 030, probably hitting in August. Cheers. Thanks for watching, my fellow exiles. Shout out to War Thunder again for sponsoring today's video. Make sure to check out War Thunder now for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or on mobile, and use my links in the pinned comment or video description to register. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe for more Talkative Tribe content, and watch this video right here wherein me, Sirgog, Localhole, and Dreamcore talk about the state of the game and provide some feedback for GGG about PoE 2. I'll see you in the next one. Stay sane, my fellow exiles.